No problem, Lauren. That's totally fine. This is all new to all of us, I think. So it's I'm still definitely figuring things out. All right. So we're supposed to have one more. Um, so I'm going to wait just a moment to see if they're going to join us. They might be having trouble signing in or something. If any of you have any questions before we start, let me know. You can unmute yourself or you could put something in the chat. I think many of you have been in weeks past, but the way this works is I will not be playing any music due to copyright issues. So just if you got something you like listening to while you do yin, put that on. I'm just going to be here either talking or quiet while we do the postures. Here's what I recommend for props. If you've got them, I know not everyone has them, but now's a great time to invest. So I think you can order them on Amazon. That's where I got these. So, bolster, blanket, block or two. And today you might want to strap. The strap is the easiest prop to simulate because all you need is a belt, some kind of a belt. Blocks are probably the hardest because they're just a kind of unusual shape, but you could sometimes stack up books to take the place of a block. Blankets, fairly easy. A towel, or you might even have a blanket that's that size. And then the bolster, sometimes if you have a couch, like a firm pillow, like a couch pillow, something like that might work. You don't want it to be too soft. All right, so let's give our friend, I don't know who it is, Leanne just tells me how many are signed up. But it seems like a lot of times we don't get, like someone doesn't show for some reason. I think some people just sign up so they can do the class later, which is fine. So as we go, again, if you have an issue or a question, unmute yourself or put something in the chat. I think the Google Hangout we're on, or whatever it is, Meetup, it does a pretty good job of making a sound. So I think I'll usually hear if you put something in the chat, and I can check then. Some of the other systems that I've taught on, there's no sound. So someone might type something and I'm just completely unaware that they are trying to get in touch with me. All right, well, I think it's enough time for our friend. If they arrive, we'll let them come in late. So I would like to start with a little bit of chanting. So this is called the pranava, which is Om. So if you'd like to join me in chanting it 3 times, that'd be great. If not, no worries. You can just listen to me. Not that that's anything that special. Most yoga practices, the way they work is you just have to do them. You don't have to be good at them. You just have to do them. And they begin to transform you from the inside out. So hearing me do this is really going to do very little for you, whereas you doing it will have a much bigger effect. So if you'd like to join me, let's take a nice deep breath in. Namaste. All right. So again, thank you all for joining me this evening, sharing your practice with me. Let's go ahead and get into our asanas, our postures. And today we're doing a sequence I created called hips and twists. And on the surface, it is 2 hip openers and 2 spinal twists. Below the surface, it's actually a very complete yin workout. Okay, so it works the 4 major myofascial compartments in the hips and the leg, and it also articulates the spine through all its articulations to a greater or lesser degree. Anytime you combine things like that, you very often run into the jack of all trades and master of none syndrome. So none of these will, well, I won't say none, but they probably will not be as deep a hip opener or as deep a spinal stretch as it would be if we were just isolating. But what's nice about this is we get a little bit of both within an hour. Okay. All right. So let's start with half butterfly. Right leg straight, left foot to the inside of the thigh. And then we just relax forward and down. Okay. Now go ahead and come into it and make sure that you're safe, that you feel that you're safe, and also that you feel stretch here and along the back side of your back. Okay, doesn't have to be super intense. For most people, the leg will be more intense than the back, but you should just feel a little bit of tension in your back, a little bit of stretching. And then, again, if you have a hard time, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to go over the use of the props. So, first thing I'll mention today is sitting up on something. Okay, if it's not quite intense enough, you could sit up on something, and that will potentially push you forward a little more aggressively. All right, so it definitely feels very different in my body doing this opposed to what I was just doing a moment ago. Okay, it's not necessarily better, but it is more intense. So if that's what you're looking for, but I will remind you that more is not always better. Okay. Another way you can use the prop is to support this leg. So block underneath your left knee. If that knee is in the air, you don't like the way that feels. This leg is basically not part of the equation for us. So if I could like take off this leg and put it over there so that it doesn't get hurt while we're practicing, I would do that. But obviously I can't. So I'm just putting it kind of out of the way. All right. Another way to use the block is under the forehead, like this, a little bit of support. So this is a little too intense, putting your forehead on block, something like that. These are different ways that you can support your head. The head is very heavy, so it may not be surprising that, you know, it can feel like a strain to hang your head like that for 5 minutes. So don't be afraid to add some support, okay? Another way to support is like this, forearms. Again, you could have the blocks. There are different heights at which you could put them, so it depends on your flexibility. Similar thing is using the bolster. So having a bolster here and resting on that, I might do something like this. Okay, and it's usually at this point that, because this starts to look a lot like restorative yoga, right? So if you haven't done much yin and you're a fan of restorative yoga, right now you might be like, oh, good, that's one of my favorite restorative yoga poses. Well, that's where I want you to stop. Because it's not a restorative yoga pose, it's a yin yoga pose. So in restorative yoga, you might want to be in that same position, but feel completely relaxed and like there isn't any kind of intense stretching happening, right? In fact, your restorative teacher might tell you that you don't want to feel any kind of strain. That's not what we're doing here. I want you to feel a good, strong stretch in the back of the thigh, a good, strong but gentle stretch in your back. If you don't, you're not really doing yin anymore. Now you're just relaxing with pillows and bolsters and blocks. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is a legitimate way to practice restorative yoga. But the name on the class is yin yoga. And so we want to stay true to the practice that we're doing because it has specific benefits that we don't get out of a restorative practice and vice versa. So I almost always am going to bring that up in almost every class, especially when I'm talking about props, because I almost never use props when I practice yin. I almost never use any props whatsoever. It doesn't mean it's bad to use them. If you need them, then you need them, and they're there for a reason. But this isn't about being super comfy. This isn't about being super relaxed. If we do yin properly, very often we feel very relaxed when we're done. But while we're doing the postures, we might feel quite an intense stretch. The postures themselves might be quite intense, and that is not a bad thing. Okay. Just a few more seconds in this one, and then we'll switch sides. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to put these out of the way because, again, I don't generally use them. Left leg straight, right foot to the inside of the thigh, and has his half butterfly. So again, nice and gentle. I'm not grabbing, I'm not pulling, I'm not yanking. It's not about deeper is better. So on the first side, I talked a little bit about use of the props. And on this side, I'd like to explore a little bit about what we're doing with the pose. So here, in this first set, again, this is hips and twists. And there are a few different ways to look at yin practices. Now, again, if you don't like talking while you do yin, then I'm not a good teacher for you, because I often take the opportunity while students are holding yin postures to educate. I and most of my students see that as a value add. In other words, it's like you're getting 2 for 1. You're doing the postures, and you're getting all the physiological benefits of the postures, but then you're also learning a little bit about maybe your body, or about yoga, yoga philosophy, spirituality, whatever it is we might be talking about. Now, again, I'm not saying everybody likes that, and I understand if you don't, but then I'm probably a bad choice. If you want just silence and, teacher's not going to say anything, then you're probably not going to like my teaching. I occasionally teach like that when I know that everyone is on the same page, but that's pretty rare. And especially when it's online like this, I can't see everybody, then it's even harder. So in this first pose, there are a few different ways. What I was going to say is a few different ways to sequence in yin. You can sequence focusing on what muscles you want to stretch or work. You can sequence on what joints you're trying to exercise or work. You can combine those in different ways. And then you can also focus on the meridians or the energetic channels. And they're all interrelated in ways. So you're never doing one without also affecting the others. But what you'll find is there can be a shift in emphasis. And that can be very subtle. So I'm not necessarily expecting the student to pick up on that. But as the teacher, I should be aware of that. And I am when I sequence. All right. So this first posture does a few things for us. It stretches the hamstrings. Now, the hamstrings are this muscle group back here. And that is one of 4 muscle groups that we have in our hips and thigh. You could say 4, you could say 6. And I have sequences that focus on the 4, and I have sequences that subdivide that into smaller groups, and that would be 6. Today we're looking at 4. Okay, so hamstrings is one of the 4, and it's always there. It's one of the 6 as well. All right, so hamstrings, as I fold forward, I stretch them. The hip joint is being brought into what's called flexion. And then the spine is also flexing. So this is going to stretch the muscles in my back, which usually for most people are not very tight. If you have tension in your back, it's usually up here. and that's usually related more with posture. Even though it might feel really good to get a massage, really what needs to happen back here is strengthening of these muscles. And so that's one of the reasons why I always encourage people to do vinyasa yoga or yang yoga in addition to yin, because yin will generally not really strengthen your back muscles, and most people need some strengthening back there. Okay, and then what's also happening under the hood is we are working the what's called the kidney bladder meridian or energetic channel. And this is the most yin of the energetic pairs in the body. It's associated with the element of water, which is considered the most yin of the 5 elements in Taoism. There's a thing in Taoism called 5-element theory. So that informs a lot of Chinese Taoist thought, Chinese medicine, Tai Chi and Qigong practices, things of that nature. Okay, so let's take a little break. And most of you know what this is. It's called Rebound. So we just relax on our back before we counter stretch. We'll counter stretch in a moment. We relax, come on our back. Close our eyes. You might sigh, just relax, feel the sensations in your back. Good. Let's bring our legs in. We'll give them a little squeeze. And let's just shake out the lingering discomfort that might be there as best as we can. It might not all go away, but let's see what we can do. And then before we continue, we will hinge. So hands under hips. We'll extend the legs up. Lift the head and neck. Gradually lower the legs toward the ground. Take a deep breath here, and then exhale. Relax again on your back. All right, next is the cattail. So what we'll do is we'll take the left leg straight up toward the ceiling, and we'll drop it over to the right side, like so. Let's prop our head up on the right hand. We're just going to take that right leg and scoot it back as far as we can. Okay, and then I can take my left leg, move it up. And it can bend, so that's really up to you. Straight or bent is up to you. Then I'm going to bend the knee and reach back and grab my right foot with my left hand, and I pull that foot in towards my buttocks, and I should feel a stretch at the front of my right thigh, and I might also feel it in my back because I am twisting here. Okay, so hips and twists. That first one was a hip opener. Sometimes people in yoga, and this includes yoga teachers as well, they get too literal with things. So there are a lot of people, and I know this because, again, I've taken yoga classes and I've seen yoga sequences online and stuff. A lot of people think a hip opener is literally something where our hips are like that, or our hips are like this. Okay? Your hips have a lot of different ways that they can move, not just out to the side. So it's not literally my hips are open, so therefore that's a hip opener. Hip opener is anything that helps to open, to create flexibility or mobility in the hip joint, in the muscles that surround the hip joint. Okay, so what you're doing is a type of hip opener. You may not think of it that way. It may not look like it. The first pose was a type of hip opener. Okay, so the front of your thigh is called your quadricep muscle, and it is connected. One of those muscles called rectus femoris is also a hip flexor. Okay, so generally when you stretch your quads, you're also stretching your hip flexors to some degree, greater or lesser degree. and vice versa. This is one of those groups I mentioned earlier that we can subdivide. So sometimes I'll sequence and I'll hit both quads and hip flexors separately, because yes, you can get a little deeper when you try and isolate them. But having said that, there's a lot of overlap. So one of the biggest challenges I've found teaching yoga is time. I've taken lots of trainings, and usually when I'm taking training, we do practices that last 2 hours or even 3 hours. And the teachers there, they talk eloquently about the right way to sequence and all the different benefits of doing this first and then that and all this other stuff. Well, I don't know when the last time these people taught a drop-in yoga class was, because in my experience, what's been happening since I started teaching in yoga studios, which is about 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, is class times have just gotten shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter. And there doesn't seem to be any indication that the trend is going to go in the other direction. So when I started teaching, I had quite a few 90-minute classes. I had a lot of 75-minute classes. And I had a minority of hour-long classes. That was the exception, not really the rule. Now it's the opposite. Generally, my classes are an hour, and I'm lucky if I have a 75-minute class. And it is what it is. I actually think it can make a huge difference when a class is longer, just from having seen the effects on students over the years. But everyone says they don't have time. So everyone wants a shorter class, more people come to it, it's just easier on everybody. So I get it. But what ends up happening is then when I sequence, I have to be very, very judicious in my use of time. And oftentimes I have to try and maybe kill two birds with one stone. And so again, this is what's happening in the sequence today. We're trying to work the spine and the hips simultaneously in one pose. So we can still hold for 5 minutes. We can still get that nice juicy stretch for the fascia and connective tissue in our body, and work our hips and our spine, which are really the main targets in yin yoga. Again, hips, spine, and then the energetic channels. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to come over to the other side. You just unwind first, right back on your back, okay? And then we take it over to the other side. So right leg up, drop it to the left. Prop your head up on your left hand. Take the left leg, move it back away from the right one. And then bending the knee, you grab the foot. Okay, pulling it in. And again, I want to feel the stretch in the front of my left thigh. And then I can lean back, deepening the twist. Okay, and just as a reminder for anybody who's new or newer, safety, you got to check that for yourself, because even more so than usual, right? I can't see you. None of you have your cameras on, so I have no idea what you're doing there. Okay, so you have to be sure that what you're doing feels safe. And then again, effectiveness. Do you feel that stretch in the front of your left thigh? That's the main thing. And then as you lay back, you might feel more and more in your back, spine, or torso. That's what twists tend to affect. So let's look at this posture. What's going on? Well, you have a little bit of a back bend. The more you lean back, both the deeper the twist and the deeper the back bend. You're stretching the front of the hip and the thigh. Those are the quads and hip flexors. There's 7 of them. And they are, you can think of them as kind of the opposite of the hamstrings. The hamstrings bend the knee, and they also pull the leg back behind you. And the quads do the opposite. The quads straighten the knee, and along with the hip flexors, they pull the leg forward. Okay, so these first two sets are very much yin yang to one another. In the first set, we're working the kidney and bladder meridian. Again, that's the water element. And then here we're working the stomach and spleen, which in 5-element theory is going to be the earth element. There's one element that we never, well, I won't say never, we generally don't target with yin yoga, and that is going to be the fire element. And the reason we generally don't work the fire element, which has actually 4 energetic channels relating with it, is because that's where yang yoga comes in. That's upper body stuff. Now, you can work upper body in a yin way, and you can work the lower body in a yang way, but especially the upper body, it generally benefits more from a yang type practice. And so vinyasa is a great yang type practice. And that's what some of you were there for the class before this one. That's what we were doing. We're doing push-ups. We're doing weight bearing with our upper body. And so it's a great way to stimulate those the meridians that are associated with the fire element. And this is, again, why if we understand that whole cosmology or worldview of the Taoists, then we understand the importance of doing both yin and yang type practices. Now, while running is yang in nature, there really isn't a whole lot of upper body strengthening going on, right? You're not really bearing weight on your arms when you run. And I think in our culture, women especially are maybe even discouraged from doing upper body weight bearing type exercise. And that's not good. It really is something that we all can benefit from. Maybe even women can benefit more. So you may have heard of osteopenia and osteoporosis, which is rapid bone loss in generally as people get older, and especially for women who are post-menopausal, that can happen very rapidly. Their bones get very fragile and frail. They lose bone mass very rapidly and quickly. And the one way to fight this is with vigorous weight-bearing exercise. And that's exactly what something like vinyasa is. So my advice is you don't really want to wait until that happens and then try and strengthen your muscles. I was listening to a book just the other day, and the author was saying it's much easier to build strength and then to get it back if you should lose it than it is to build it for the first time. So imagine, being later in life in your 60s or 70s and you're trying to build upper body strength for the first time in your life. It's going to be difficult. All right, let's go ahead and unwind from that, just back onto our back, and we will relax for a few moments. All right, let's bring the legs in, give them a little squeeze. Feel free to move a bit. Find those sweet spots of where you feel the body sort of releasing its tension naturally. And then we'll go ahead and hinge up this time. Okay, so we come to another hip opener, right? And this one is going to really look like a hip opener, if you will. So I like to sit on a blanket for this, but as always, your mileage may vary. So you do what works for you and your body there in your home. But this is what I like to do. I'll sit on a blanket and then I'll go ahead and come forward, my legs wide. Just want to be sure that gravity is pulling me forward and not back. And then I'm going to turn toward my left leg and I'll just reach down and just hold the foot like this. Now feel free to use a strap. I mentioned a strap earlier. You can use a strap. And what I want to feel is two things. A stretch here on the inside of the thigh. It might be in the back as well. And then I want to feel a stretch here in my waist. And I can, if I don't feel that, I begin to roll my right shoulder over my left shoulder like so. Okay, so we're here like this. All right. And it may not be equal. You might feel more stretch in one area than the other. And feel free to use the props for support. I've seen people do all kinds of creative things, putting their head on a block, putting a bolster under their arm. Okay. I'm not going to demo any of that because there's no like standard way to use them. You just sort of whatever you need in terms of support. So again, what we will find is if we do an analysis of this sequence, the way I created it is that there is a spine workout within each hip stretch, and there is a hip stretch within each twist. So again, hips and twists. And what we get at the end of the sequence is a very well-rounded workout for both the muscles in the hips and the spinal column and the different energetic channels have been worked. So here we're stimulating the, it's called liver gallbladder energetic channels. So the liver is here on the inside of the thigh and the gallbladder is here. So we're working the upper part of the gallbladder channel, which is going to be in our waist here. And then the liver channel is here on the inside of the thigh. And it actually runs into the body and runs up on the inside of the body. So that's not something you can stimulate with yoga postures. This can be a very awkward and kind of intense posture. So, you know, that's what you're feeling. It's not unusual at all. It's quite intense for me as well. But just try and do your best to stay in it. Again, for anyone who's a little newer or not familiar with these concepts, the benefits of yin really come from holding the postures. So the benefits don't come from, you know, coming in and out of it over and over again. I might do that as I teach. I want to remind everybody that teaching yoga is not taking yoga and vice versa. So I may hold some of the postures, I might not, but I don't want you to follow what I'm doing. When I teach in person, I very often don't do any postures. I just teach completely verbally to really drive home that point. I'm not there to practice, I'm there to teach and to support. So that's important to remember, because I think in some fitness style classes, the instructors, they're doing it with you and they're sort of like cheering you on and all that kind of stuff. But I was taught not to teach yoga that way, very specifically, that when I'm teaching, and when I'm taking, and those are very different things. So please keep that in mind. You want to stay in the posture regardless of what I'm doing. You might find at this point we've been in for about 4 minutes. You no longer feel the stretch. That's okay. You don't have to chase after it. But if it feels like, if you feel like you want to go a little deeper, if your body feels like it wants to go further, you may. So again, there's no hard and fast rule about that you should or shouldn't be going further with the stretch. Let your intuition and what you're feeling in your body guide you in that regard. Just have a few more seconds left here. Okay, so we're making our way up. The legs are still wide. We're coming over the right leg. And again, the two important things to check are, do I feel safe doing this with my body? And then secondly, do I feel the stretches? And today, again, it's to the inside of the right thigh and the outside of the left waist. The spine is brought into what's called lateral flexion. This is the sideways movement. I'm often surprised, again, when I see sometimes yoga sequences, they'll say things like spine flow or something like that. And they leave out this sideways movement in the spine. It's a little bit like hip openers, thinking that this is the only way to open the hips. Well, the hips have 4 or 6 different muscle groups that need to be opened for us to have truly open hips. Again, we don't want to take it too literally. This does not mean I have open hips just because my knees can drop down. That's not the only way in which the hips can be open. This is as much about open hips as the other thing was. This is a different kind of open hips. Okay, many people can't sit like this, and I can. It doesn't mean I'm better than anybody. It just means that my hips are open in a different kind of way. And very often people have one or the other. It's very rare that people have both. So this is called internal rotation. And I have a fairly strong internal rotation. And I have a poor external rotation, relatively speaking. Now, I've been doing yoga a long time, so my hips are, at this point, relatively open in both directions. My knees are fairly close to the ground. But you'll see people who've never done a day of yoga in their life, and they sit like this, and their knees drop flat down onto the ground, no problem. And again, that's a type of open hip. But then if I ask them, hey, let's do this, they might say, oh my God, how do you do that? You know, that looks painful. You know, it looks like your knees are broken or your ankles are broken. So again, very often, my yin teacher, Paul Grilly, he likes to call them tribes. And he says, usually you belong to one tribe or the other. You're the internal tribe or the external tribe. But some people have both. So again, it's not better or worse. Having internal rotation, strong internal rotation is good for certain things. It's not good for others. Having really open hips in general is good for some things and not for others. So again, when we begin to compare ourselves to others or think that there's some kind of perfect person that we're all measuring ourselves against, we can do a lot of violence to our bodies or just to ourselves in general, emotionally. We can really hate ourselves. We can hate our bodies. We can hate, you know, the particular gifts that we've been given. When in reality, really, we don't need to compare ourselves to anybody else. They have their journey that they're on, their gifts that they've been given, and we don't need to chase after what they have. We should really just focus on being the best us that we can be. And the beautiful thing about yoga, if we use the techniques properly, is it helps us do exactly that. It helps you become the best you that you can be. Now, you might think, well, I am me. How can I be anyone else? And you're right, in a sense. But if you look a little bit deeper, what you might find is a lot of people are trying to be something other than they are. Maybe they were told when they were very young that they shouldn't be a certain way. Maybe the society they live in, it values people that have a certain kind of quality. Maybe your culture values extroverts and you're an introvert. Maybe your parents told you, stop being so shy. What's wrong with you? And you think, oh God, I need to be different. What's wrong with me? Well, I think the perspective that we get from yoga is that really there's a beauty in just about everything. And it really is all beautiful, the variety, the differences between us. We don't all need to fit into one mold. And the more that we can accept ourselves as we are, the better it is, the easier it is for us to have compassion toward others and to accept them as they are. All right, let's unwind from there. Come back onto our back and just relax for a few moments. Feel the rebound. And we have one last set to do. I'm going to move the props out of the way because they are probably not going to be very helpful for this next set. So we have one more twist we'd like to do. This is probably deeper than the first twist. And it continues, you might say, the work that we were doing in the last set. Let's begin just by bringing our legs in and giving them a squeeze. Again, that's called the leg cradle. Cradle the legs, move around a little bit. And then what I'd like you to do is you're going to take your left leg, cross it over the right. Now make sure you know your left and your right. Okay, so you can do this trick. This forms a little L, right? Left over right, down to the left. Okay, that might feel really awkward. That's because it's the reverse of what we normally do with yin postures, okay? With the spinal twist. But there's a reason I'm doing that. I want to play around with the position of my legs so that I feel a stretch out here. Okay, these are the abductors, also known as the glutes. They could also be called extensor muscles because some of the muscles here help extend the hip joint. Right? Regardless of what we call them, we want to feel generally a stretch here. It might come up in your waist, just kind of depends. Generally, the lower the knees are, the more intense the stretch is for me. The higher the knees, the deeper the twist. So I can kind of decide what I want. I like to extend my arm up in a slight Y position. And that gives me a nice stretch right into here, the pectoralis muscle group, right, the front of the chest there. Now, again, that is part of the fire element, the meridians in the fire element. So the lungs, the heart, large and small intestine meridians. So they're getting a little stretch. But again, think of fire. If you understand a little bit about yin and yang, right? Water is very yin. Fire is very yang. So these other meridians, the lungs, the kidney, bladder, liver, gallbladder, the stomach and spleen, those three. And again, the different elements are water, wood, and earth. Those three, very, very effective to work them with yin practice. But then these fire element meridians, really they work better with yang. Think of yang yoga. You get hot, you begin sweating, you're moving, you're dynamic. Think of fire. It's moving, right? It's flowing. Again, fire's not wood. There's wood element. Wood element has a different kind of quality, different kind of energy. So I get it. A lot of people who like doing yin, they don't necessarily like doing push-ups. They don't necessarily like being active. They don't necessarily like to sweat. But if we want balance, if we want health, we want some of that in our life. It doesn't have to be an equal amount. And I think what many people find is there's a resistance to doing more active things because life can be very stressful, modern life. And so we might get the feeling like, you know, I'm already stressed out enough. I think I need to just relax. And yin seems more relaxing. And it can be, but vinyasa can also have its own relaxation that can come with it. There can be a very deep relaxation that comes when we're very active for a while. And then we eventually come to relaxation. There can be a very deep relaxation that comes with that. So keep that in mind. And again, if you have a very stressful life and you find that yin really helps, it's perfectly fine to do yin. You know, that's your daily practice. But then maybe once or twice a week, you do some vinyasa. Do some upper body weight bearing stuff. Now you can do lift weights if you want, or you can play tennis if you want. That'll also stimulate these same meridians, but my feeling is they don't tend to do it as well as the yoga type practices. That could be my personal bias, but I think a lot of times when we start getting into lifting weights or playing tennis, we very often start getting kind of distracted. We start getting more goal oriented, like how much weight am I lifting? How many reps am I doing? You know, am I playing tennis well? So the yoga tends to be more pure movement, pure stimulation. So it's not stimulation with some other goal in mind. It's just purely moving the joints, the body, the breath, sweating. Okay, let's switch sides. So again, I want you to take time to really be conscious. Otherwise, you end up in a different pose. Right knee over left, and the knees come down to the right side. Again, you play around with the position of legs. Right there feels good for me. I feel it out here, the outside of my hip. And again, I'm going to try and place my arm right where I feel stretch in these pecs here. So mine are a little bit sore from a workout that I did earlier. So I'm just giving them a nice stretch. That feels really good. It's sort of a diagonal stretch across my body. And again, I can play around with that. There are lots of different muscles that attach to the shoulder there, so I can work them. I can place this hand here on the knees. You could also mirror what you're doing in the other arm. It's fine. Or place it in any position that is comfortable. I like it here because it helps to weigh my knees down. If your knees aren't quite touching the ground, feel free to put something underneath there. A block or a blanket very often will do the trick. You could also put something under your shoulder if it's in the air, but you don't have to. So I really want to be very clear about that. If it's helpful, fine, but it's not dangerous. It's not inherently dangerous to have your shoulder up off the ground a little bit. All right, so we got about 3 minutes, 30 seconds left here. I am going to mention something because it's happening to me right now. Tingling in your fingers. Again, many students think, oh, my hand is falling asleep. It's not. It would take probably 10, 15, 20 minutes for your blood circulation to cut off. What's happening is your nerve is being impinged. It's called a nerve impingement. What it means is one of these bones or muscles here is pinching your nerve that runs into your arm down into your fingers. So that's that sort of burning, tingling sensation that we get. Prickly sensation. So what you want to do is move your, just like I did, you want to move your arm. So this position seems to be working right now. I don't feel that same prickly, tingling sensation. You might find that every time your arm is in that position, it happens. For me, it tends to depend on the day. So some days it's there, it's very quick and intense. Other days it's not. Now, I just want to make it very clear, impinging your nerve is not good for the nerve long term. So you're not probably going to damage it just by doing that. But you don't exactly want to stay there and lay there with that prickly, tingling sensation going on, okay? This can happen in the legs as well. It just doesn't happen to me. So same idea. If your leg begins to get that kind of weird, prickly, tingling sensation, you may think your leg is going to sleep. That's not it. It's some kind of a nerve or sciatic problem. So in the legs, there's a name for it, right? Sciatica, where that happens, and it might happen a lot. It can become very uncomfortable, very painful. Well, it's the same idea here in the upper body. It's just usually easier to take care of. Okay, let's go ahead and unwind from that posture. We'll come back onto our back and just relax for a moment, feeling the rebound. Let's draw our legs in, give them a little squeeze. And then let's go ahead and set up for Yoga Nidra. So Yoga Nidra is a guided meditation. It's done laying down. So I recommend a bolster under your knees, maybe a little bit of padding behind your head, but try and avoid having your head raised up above your heart. If you have a lot of lights on where you are, try shutting them off. If you have an eye pillow, even better. Place that over your eyes. If you're at all cold, cover yourself with a blanket. And try and make yourself very comfortable so you will not need to move for a few minutes. So Yoga Nidra basically translates as sleep meditation. It's guided meditation done, like I said, laying on your back. And in almost any legitimate form of meditation, you're going to find that there are two very important qualities. And one is awareness, and the other is stillness. So stillness comes from positioning your body correctly, and then just setting the intention to allow your body to remain still no matter what. And that can be harder than it sounds. And then the awareness part comes in this practice in the form of not actually falling asleep. So the tendency when we relax on our back is to fall asleep, to lose consciousness. And so you're being invited or encouraged to not do the easy thing, to stay present, to stay aware, to stay awake, okay? And this practice will last, 5 or 10 minutes today. So make yourself very comfortable. Set the intention to remain awake and to remain alert. Then let's take a nice deep breath in, filling the lungs, and we'll exhale with a deep sigh. And again, let's inhale very deeply and fully, and we'll exhale with a deep sigh. Good. Now just let your breath be completely natural. You're not trying to breathe deeply or slowly. The breath just comes and goes at its own pace. But you're allowing yourself to be aware of it, to feel it. Now there might be thoughts that come or go. There might be sounds or sense perceptions in the environment around you. But the breath is still there. Just keep allowing yourself to experience the breath as a felt sensation. As you do, feel how both the mind and the body naturally begin to let go. Today, I'd like to invite you to work with a personal intention or sankalpa. Personal intention should be a longer term goal, maybe 6 months or several years or even a lifetime. And to work with a personal intention, you want a statement of intention. And the statement of intention should be made in the first person in the present tense and use only positive language. So a great example is I am healthy. once you pick a personal intention, stay with the same one until it manifests. Or if something becomes more important, then you can switch to that. Repeat your personal intention to yourself silently 3 times now. And then go ahead and move your focus or awareness to your physical body. I'm going to begin to name specific points on your body, and as I do, I'd like you to just simply shift or move your attention or awareness to each point as it's named. For the best effect, do this without actually moving your physical body, and also without dozing off or falling asleep. Move your attention or focus to the point between the eyebrows. Now the pit of your throat. The right shoulder. Your elbow. The right wrist. Your thumb. The tip of your right index finger. The tip of the middle finger. Ring finger. Little finger. The wrist. The elbow. The shoulder. And the pit of your throat. Now the left shoulder. Left elbow. The wrist. The tip of your left thumb. The tip of the index finger. Middle finger. Ring finger. And the little finger. The wrist. Elbow. Shoulder. And the pit of your throat. Now the center of your chest. The right side of your chest. The center of your chest. The left side. The center of the chest. The navel. The center of the pubic bone. Right hip. Knee. The ankle. Your big toe. the second toe, middle toe, fourth toe, and the little toe, the ankle, the knee, the hip, and the middle of the pubic bone. Now the left hip, the left knee, the ankle, the big toe, the second toe, middle toe, fourth toe, and the little toe, the ankle, the knee, the hip, and the middle of the pubic bone. Now the navel, the chest, the pit of the throat, and the point between the eyebrows. Now the entire body, from the top of your head to the tips of your toes, the whole body. Now move your awareness up to the point between the eyebrows. Feel your awareness begin to drop below the layer of thinking. Into that quiet space that is below or around each thought. Into this quiet space, bring your personal intention or sankalpa. Repeat your intention to yourself silently 3 times. Now, return awareness to your breathing. Gradually begin to deepen your breathing. Feel how energy, awareness, and movement naturally return to the body. Begin to move and stretch as you wake yourself up. When you sense that you're ready, make your way up to seated. All right, everyone. So let's bookend our practice, a little bit of chanting. Now, again, some of you may have never taken class with me in person. And in person, I always mention that chanting is every bit as much yoga as the postures and the meditation we just did. And I get it, that may be hard to swallow or understand at first. It might feel like, why are we doing music all of a sudden? What does that have to do with any of this? Trust me, it does. Okay, I'm not going to go into a long spiel right now about why. But as I said at the beginning, practices work when we do them. Okay, it's not bad to question things. And again, if we had more time, I could explain things in more detail. But I'm going to just ask you to take my word for it. Okay, maybe you can't sing where you are, and that's okay. Maybe you just mentally sing along. But if you'd like to join me, the words are Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. I'll sing a few different melodies, and I'll repeat each one. So you just sing. If you already know it, you can sing from the start. If you don't, you can sing on the second go round. May all beings be happy and free. Namaste. So thank you all for sharing your practice this evening. I hope you got a lot from it. Again, if there are questions, if you have difficulty, I am happy to support you as your yoga teacher, whether we have an intimate relationship, one you've known me for a long time, or you just met me. If you feel like you'd like me to help you, I'm happy to do that. Reach out. If you enjoy that little last bit with the Yoga Nidra, I'll be leading one on Facebook Live tomorrow. It's free. Come join me. It's going to be longer than that. It's going to be deeper than that. And that's going to be at noon tomorrow. That is my plan. That's what I plan on doing at noon tomorrow, is leading a nice long Yoga Nidra for you guys if you want to join me. if you can't make it, don't worry. I'm going to record it, and it's going to be up on my Patreon page. And again, that's free. So a lot of practices there. Again, I feel like at a time like this is really when we need our yoga, we need our teachers. So I'm trying to support my students in any way that I can. Again, if you need personal instruction one-on-one, we can do that. If you need video practices, yin yoga, yang yoga, vinyasa, pranayams, yoga nidra, meditation, I do it all, chanting, whatever you need. I want to be there to help you out. And again, don't worry about the money if you're strapped for money. Okay. All right. So thank you all again for joining me. I hope you got a lot from that. Reach out if you have questions or concerns. This will be going up on my Patreon page if you want to do the class again. And I hope to see you next week. If you can, join me for flow for vinyasa at 4:45. And if not, I'll hope to see you at 6 for yin. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Yep. So Lauren, Sarah, Kenneth, Meredith, Michelle, thank you. Did I miss anybody? Sarah, thank you all so much. Oh, good. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Glad you're blissed out. So thank you all. See you next time.